Hey people, welcome to the first actual episode of Making the Tools. We will start off with a flattening tool for our landscape. This is going to be a part of a bigger landscape brush tool that will have multiple features, including erosion, different shapings, maybe painting layers as well, stuff like this. So in this episode, we will not only really just make the flattening tool, but actually make a skeleton and fundamentals for the rest of the series. So with that said, we can really start to begin. And this is the map that we have. Just a open world map, fresh map, nothing really changed over here. However, I want to make a couple of changes for my sanity. First one is to rename the layers, to include the underscore over here, because I am scared of white spaces. So let's change that real quick. Cool, and save it. And right now we can open Houdini Session Sync. Cool. So we can start off by just dropping a geometry node, and inside we can drop a null and wrap it with a subnetwork and call it landscape brush. Perfect. Now we can create a digital asset out of it without the namespace. Just capitalize the letter. And I like to remove the sub over here, because that will indicate to me that it's not supposed to be used inside of Houdini, but rather as an HDA inside of Unreal. So let's create it. No inputs. All right. And we can start, or actually let's go back to Unreal and already import this tool. Perfect. So just drag and drop it. Cool. Save it, and we can instantiate it. This will do nothing right now, but it will be in the world. Cool. So with that done, we can add some inputs. This is going to be the landscape brush. So we want to import the landscape for sure. And the way that I envision it is that we are going to draw some curves, some primitives that will be filled with polygons and serve as areas, as brushes. So I'll call it curve areas. All right. Now we can add this already into our input. So let's change the name to input, add a folder, change the name to input, set it to collapsible because I like it that way, and add a landscape, and add curve areas, and curve areas. Okay. And apply accept. Cool. Now we'll start off by just testing out if this works. So I will quickly drop a height filter angle and set my height to 0. Height equals 0. So that means that the landscape that we import will be fully flattened. And I'll just output it over here. Now imagine that in this section over here, we do some processing of this landscape. So I will call this null processed landscape. And after I process this landscape, I have to set up a few attributes to tell Unreal what to do. So this is going to be a few string attributes. So add create a string, and the first one is Unreal output name, and the name is going to be landscape. So this basically tells Unreal which actor is the one affected and by default landscape is called landscape. So that's it, and it should be a primitive, I believe. Cool. The next attribute we make is Unreal landscape edit layer name, and the edit layer name is going to be parameterized by us. So I'll just drag and drop it over here. Output layer name. Output layer name. Cool. And I'll call this layer underscore procedural underscore edits. Great. By default, it's going to be called like this. Perfect. Now, another one that I want is this time delete the channel. This time it's going to be landscape output mode. And this is going to be an integer and set it to 1, which means edit. Edit layer and not create a new landscape, but rather just create a layer in an existing landscape. Cool. And the last one is shared volume output. And now this is the special node for this plugin. Basically what it means, what it does is it makes the whole system work faster. I tried it without the node and with the node, and with the node it's definitely going smoother. Cool. If that's then done, I think we can save this and go back to Unreal and see if anything is happening. Let's rebuild it. And I want to add my landscape and cook it. And what I see is that nothing's happening, but that's good. But a layer is created, so exactly what we expected. Perfect. So if that's said and done, we can add a curve and see if it appears inside of Unreal. Inside of Houdini. And, well, we can go back a couple of times because we do not need this GeoNode, but rather just debug it on a Houdini session level. So Unreal sent this data over to Houdini, and we have a live debugging mode really right now. Cool. And yeah, the curve is also imported. Okay. So what I can do right now is to do a height field project and just straight project this curve onto the landscape. But, well, we're going to have a couple of problems. First of all, well, we cannot really project a curve because it doesn't contain any geometry. So let's start off by fixing this first. To do that, I'll just copy what we have in the plugin examples. And this is basically as follows. We add a Houdini convert curves, and then we add a couple of nodes like this. Ends with close U, close straight. This will give us a filled area like this. Then we do a normal and add normal vector to the primitives. And then we can do a primitive wrangle, and based on this normal, check if it's pointing down or up, and if it's pointing down, we can reverse it. So the expression that we want to check is like this: add group reversed. So we will add to this group based on this expression. And we want to check the vector attribute, which is imported from the primitive of the first input. And we check the normal at primnum because we do it for each primitive, and we only care about the y component of this. And we check if it's smaller than 0. Cool. And did I forget something? I probably did. a parentheses. Cool. And now we can drop a reverse node. And based on this, add a reversed group as a source group. And based on this, it will reverse the primitive. Perfect. Now let's drop this to the height field project. And this is going to project something onto the height field. But as you can see, we have a couple of problems, namely that we are importing multiple height fields, which makes complete sense because we have, well, multiple layers. Actually, we have the two main layers that we hand paint, let's say, and a procedural layer. And we do not really want to do that. Right now it's importing only two, but if we rebuild, it will also import the procedural layer as well. So the best way really to deal with it right now, we could do a couple of things. We could go to the tool and add a landscape filter. But what I'd like to do in this case is to actually import all of the layers and merge them inside of Houdini. And we will do that by just simply mimicking what's happening in Unreal. So each of those height layers is really just a piece of data that is added on top of each other. So with that said, let's actually do that. So we have this in Unreal. We have two layers inside of Unreal, doesn't really matter how many. We'll go over to Houdini and to a operation for each primitive. So for each of those primitives, we want to add them on top of each other. We no longer really need this wrangle either. So to do that, we don't want to merge, we want to feedback each iteration and have the access to the feedback, so fetch feedback. And we can now just do a height field layer. Height field layer, base terrain, terrain to layer, boom, and add. And that gives us the result that is basically the same as in Unreal. Perfect. So with the recombined landscape, we can proceed, really. The good way, or the positives of this is that we have still access to each of those layers individually, should we want to. But yeah, let's go over here and check what it is right now. Cool. Save it and see in Unreal if it's working. Cool. But we have a couple of problems. Problem number one is that I moved the tool, so it's no longer at 0, 0, 0. That's my bad. I wanted to move the primitive. Okay. So that's problem number one dealt with. Problem number two, obviously, as you can see, is that we are layering the stuff that is around the tool or around the object. Now, that's what was going to happen because we have all of this data over and we are sending it as a separate new additive layer, which is not really what we want. So what we could do is we could set height field to 0 here, and then we'll just have this projected area. This would work, and let's actually see what happens. So height field wrangle, and again, f at height equals 0, and let's see what happens. So the landscape returned to normal. We have this is flattened, job's done. Not really, because, well, it's not really flattening at this section because we removed the entire height field data. So that solution is not really a solution. So let's remove this and let's try something different. what we can do is add a mask. So height field mask by geometry, because we want to mask our height field with the curves. And let's actually add a null, and let's connect this stuff over here, call the null in curve curves. All right. And do this, right? Now, unfortunately, nothing is happening because we try to write into a mask layer that doesn't exist. So we have to create a blank layer. To do that, we can do a couple of nodes like this. So our favorite height field wrangle, which I am typing for the third time this tutorial, with setting the height to 0. And with the labs, we have height field insert mask. Sorry, only one source. Let's clear it. Only one source, and the source is going to be height, and new name is going to be mask. So we create a layer, a mask layer from the height layer from here, which is 0. So we basically create a blank, empty mask layer. And after we create this mask layer, height field mask, insert, we insert this newly created mask layer over to our main height field. And to not get lost, I will drop another null and call it in landscape. And connect it over here. Now, did this work, or did I forget to do something? Oh yeah, I forgot to do one insert over here. Now we have a mask field. Perfect. Yep. And this is the mask field. And we want to layer this on top of each other. So basically find the difference between the main layer and the new layer that we just projected by this brush. So let's connect these two. Not replace, but rather subtract. And this is the difference between the two. Between the two layers, between the main landscape and the projected. So let's connect it to the processed landscape, save it, and see what happens. Cool. So this is actually flattening right now. This does what we wanted. Let's see what happens if I go below. If I go below, nothing happens. So let's fix that. We can do it really easily by going over to height field project, and the combine mode, instead of maximum, do replace. Save it, go back, cook it, or rather move it below, and then auto cooks, and we are below. Perfect. So that's one issue, but one other issue that we created and not really see right now is if we go over to the landscape mode, to the paint layers, we have a new mask paint layer. We definitely do not want that, and that mask layer was created when we, well, added it over here. So what I want is to, at the very end, before the processed landscape, we can add a blast node and blast this mask layer. Let's save node, remove it from here, and recook. And maybe move it a bit. And we no longer have this mask layer. Perfect. So now let's see what happens when we drop another curve area. So let's draw it. And it works. It's cool. But it's not really what we want, because right now any changes that we would have for that we would create would only apply globally to all of the curves that we create under this tool. But we want individual control, so we need to make some slight setup to it. And to do that, first of all, what we need to do is we need to do basically all of this. Instead of having it automatically merged over here, we need to do this operation for these operations here for each primitive, so for each area. So for each primitive, and it's going to serve, it's going to work similarly to this section where we feedback and add on top of each other the stuff that we make. So instead of merge each iteration, just feedback, duplicate this, and fetch feedback. Okay. And we do this operation for each area curve. So let's connect it over here. Let's slightly move it around. It's a bit messy right now. The ending is going to be over here after the height field layer, at least right now. And we want to move these nodes, connections to the for each loop. And the landscape is just fed externally. Cool. Now let me create a null, not RBD solver, just a null, and connect it over here. And I will name it attribute controller and give it some color because it's going to be a really important node going forward. And cool. So right now, if we cook it, we will only have one output, which is not really desired because we are not really merging it yet. So this first curve disappeared. So let's go over and check what we can do with this. We can do a height field layer and add those together. So the shape that we just create, add it to a previous shape. Just do an add. And that should return it. Perfect. So now let's add this control that we talked about. We have to go over to our properties and create a folder. And the name of this folder is going to be pretty important. The name, the actual name, the parameter name, has to be the same as one of the inputs that we are concerned with. So we expect to carry over our data on the curves, on the primitives, so curve areas. So we have to call this folder in a very specific way, and that is curve areas, which is exactly the same as here, underscore prim underscore attribs. And I will just copy it and have the label named the same. Apply, and just temporarily to showcase this per primitive control, I will add a float here and call it test blur. Just call it blur, have a range here. Apply, and this test blur will be here with our height field blur node. Just some height field blur. And let's see what happens. So if we put it over here, we'll be blurring this shape. which is what we want. We could expand the mask value a bit to avoid this. So I know it's for testing, but just to be a slightly more pedantic, height field mask expand. I'll just expand it very slightly by 1, and that should be enough. Okay. So now to have this per primitive control, we cannot really just assign this channel, this parameter from our properties window over here. We have to call it from each primitive because it's carried over on the primitives. So we do it this way. We call prim and reference the attribute controller. I cannot type. Attribute controller. Primitive number doesn't matter because we are doing it for each primitive. The attribute name is test blur and index is 0. So we take this attribute from the attribute controller for each primitive. Okay, and it's 0 right now. Apply, accept, save. Go back to Unreal, and right now we have to rebuild the tool after adding this parameter. So let's rebuild it. And often it happens that Houdini crashes at this stage. So let's go to Task Manager and close Houdini. Open Session Sync again. Let's wait a short moment. Cool, cool. Minimize, rebuild. Okay, we are super empty. What happens? Why is nothing here? Spoiler alert, this shouldn't be happening. Okay, just had to move it slightly or cook it. Oh, we have another issue. It's sometimes working, sometimes not working. Perfect, love those issues. Fortunately, we have a way to fix it. We just have to find the source of it. So, if we go to our landscape node here, you can see that we are actually importing this as well, which is really not what we want. We only want to import the base 2 layers and have this procedural detail added inside of Houdini, and Houdini shouldn't care about it at all. So what we do here is we go to our landscape brush, Houdini parameters, and add some filters. And those filters are for the 2 landscape layers that we have, flat middle and base landscape. It's called base landscape, yeah, cool. So we have to add those 2 filters. So base landscape and flat middle. Amazing. Okay, let's just save everything. Okay. And let's try to move it now. And it's working perfectly. Okay, we fixed that issue. And what we actually wanted to check before we found out this little hiccup is we wanted to check the blur parameter to have to be per primitive, per area. So let's go to Houdini Engine, edit, and we have a blur parameter over here. So let's increase it, and we are now blurring this. It's just for testing, so you know we have some weird results in the middle because we are not actually masking the edges, but it's working. We are blurring this section, and we can have different blur values for each of those primitives. Perfect. So that pretty much covers it. So as a small recap, is we have the tool set up, we import the landscape layers, we merge them together in Houdini. We create a empty mask layer, which we use later. And on a separate stream, we import curves. Make them into areas. And then for each of those areas, we project it, mask it, then do a subtraction on the layer to find the difference. So to actually create the additive layer that we want for the Unreal landscape. And then do some slight blurring to showcase the primitive control. And then we add all of the shapes together and remove the mask because we don't need it. Set some basic parameters and send it over to Unreal. So that's pretty much it. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this little journey in this episode. In the next one, I think we will do some deformation, some erosion, some noises, and really expand the tool set or the features of this tool to be able to deform the landscape and make some really cool shapes quickly. So again, I hope you learned something new. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you on the next video. Bye!